What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Jaron Spor. I'm going to tell you why. Can we just end this season already?
I'm Marcus Ray, and I'm going to tell you why the Carolina Panthers just absolutely dialed up and the game plan they had for this game.
And I'm Ryan Lavoie, and I'm going to tell you why the Bucs offense is to blame in Week 17.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
What up, Buck Squad? Like I said, I'm your host, Jaron. We've got a packed show for you today to break down the 20-17 loss to the Miami Dolphins. We'll break down the offense and defense, go around the NFL, look at a major score that has a lot to do with the Bucs' playoff hopes, and then we will dive into our player of the game like we do in our post-game show. Also, reminder, this is just extra content that we do 2 times a week. This doesn't take anything away from what James does. He does a great job. I believe he's going live later on tonight, so make sure to check around. He had another obligation right now, but check his show later on tonight to get his reaction. But first, let's dive into the offense. It was a weird showing, in my opinion, because the Bucs go right down the field. First drive looked great, score a touchdown. Second drive, they get to about midfield, stall, and after that, it was a lot of nothing before, the interceptions at the end, the fumble at the end, and things like that. I was telling Ryan before, if the game could have only been till the 50-yard line, the Bucs might have put up 50 points because they were great until they got to about midfield offensively, or at least really good. As soon as they got to midfield, it was like they went junior high ball. And some of that was the play calling. Some of that was just performance level. It was just a weird performance by the offense. And then you have the last drive of the game. They hit a 59-yarder, then a quick pass, and another quick pass, and a touchdown. Like it was nothing. And so it was a weird offensive game.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, no, I think, Jared, to lead off things, I would say that the turnovers are just a huge story of the game, and that's what you're alluding to with the positive starts to the drive, but then you would have these killer turnovers where, you're in scoring range 2 of the 3 times, and even the other time was just a second down interception, the very first one, but you fumble at late in the game on 2nd and 3 from the Dolphin 31. Again, you're down 10 points, so you'll take a field goal if you can get it just to keep yourself alive. The second interception that Baker threw was on a 1st and 10 from the Miami 32. So again, worst case scenario, you have a couple more incomplete passes and you're kicking a 49 or 50-yard field goal. So you're leaving points on the board automatically. And then also because they're early downs, you might be leaving a touchdown on the board if you can keep that drive working, because the first drive of the game was what the offense needed to look like. A little run, little pass. They converted on 3rd down a couple different times. The first drive of the game, you'd like to bottle up and package it and sell it for every single drive that you could. But every moment since that, they could not keep stringing together everything that they needed. And, even at the end of the first half, having to take the 55 or 56-yard field goal attempt, which gets blocked. Again, that's another moment where, 55-yarder for Chase McLaughlin has been money this year, but still, I'm not comfortable saying before the half, oh, we got to the periphery of field goal range. No, get inside the 30, get a touchdown opportunity, get a pass to the end zone at least. And so they just did so little with enough opportunities to score way more than 17 points, because it actually became pretty heartbreaking that they scored at the end of the game in the way that they did, that Godwin had the long catch and run, that they scored so effortlessly to make it a 3-point game, because any one of those possessions I just mentioned, if any of them are field goals, you're looking at a tie game. And the Bucs defense did a quality job in the second half, which we'll talk about later. So again, I just felt like the story of the game just has to start with those turnovers. And there's a combination of things. You can say the first interception that Baker threw was just a poor decision. You can talk about the second one's a great play by the safety. The third one, the fumble, is more on the left tackle. But the reality is that you cannot turn the ball over 3 times like that and expect to win the football game.
Well, one thing to your point, Ryan, is like this. Like, when you look at the Bucs offense, they came out. I think that Josh Grizzard shows his hand on the first series of every game. So I've never been a fan of any coach that has a 10-play script or, you know, when you coach football at any level, I believe you need 4 game plans. I think you need a beginning, a middle, an end, and an adjustment. And so they looked flawless on the first drive. Yes, they did convert a couple of third downs, but it was very apparent that the Bucs were trying to feed everybody. Everybody got a touch. I mean, like Rashad White, Bucky, Mike. I mean, maybe second quarter Mike, but like Cade Otton first play of the game, play action. I mean, so you start coming out, you want to fake the run, throw it. Everybody got touches. And at this point of the season, and I think as good of a job that Vilma does, he's not better than me when it comes to commentary, so he talks a little too much. So like, and I'm saying it publicly. Put it on the shorts too, Jaron, while you're at it. So he's not better than me, but he made a couple of points that I thought were valid, and it was like, you know, as a coordinator, you have a lot of mouths to feed. Okay, even when they put Sean Tucker in down there, he did good when he got the ball, but it was like you're the jack of all trades, but the master of nothing. And then I challenged the Bucs to go vertical, and they did. They tried with Mike. They tried with Emeka, and the first one led to that first interception. I just don't think they have in-game adjustment ability outside of the first drive. And if the defense is struggling, because you got to remember, I mean, Carolina ran off 17 unanswered, and they were, I mean, not Carolina, but I'm sorry. I mean, they were completely in control of the game, Miami. And I was like, why are they running the ball so effectively? Like, what's so remember last week we talked a lot about the Bucs play call and had a lot to do with protecting the defense, or you want ball control, you want to keep the ball. Like that first drive was 14 plays. I mean, it was the kind of drive that you thought, you know what, the Bucs they should be all right, you know, even if it's a close game, field goal here or there. But when you have turnovers, and then when you have a field goal blocked field goal, just let them miss it. But it was blocked. Mm-hmm. I mean, something went wrong somewhere when there's a blocked field goal. I just felt like Tampa Bay, when they start putting the graphics up, because I'm sure that helps our show because we don't have researchers like Ryan, whatever you say, Jaron, whatever you say, whatever I say, we come up with it on our own, or we listen to other people. So when they start putting up the Bucs statistics, you know, since week 9, I'm like, wow, you know, I know it was bad. I know it's this bad. When you start off hot in the beginning of the season, it's because no one has film on you. So when the Bucs were relevant in the first 6 weeks of the season, it was like, all right, Baker MVP, this guy, that guy, whatever, injuries, yeah, they can coach. The more film you get out there on you, I think it speaks to your identity or lack thereof. Even the drive right before the half, it looked better than the drives we've seen in 2-minute situations until it didn't. And then it was like, oh, it's the same old Bucs. But we kind of said, you know, we'd be surprised if they win another game. And Miami found a way defensively to make a couple of plays. Last thing I'll say is this. That second interception, the way they disguised their coverage, where the safety was down to the short side of the field, and it looked like the post route was open. Baker, I don't know why he fell for that. And then when they rotated, when the ball was snapped, and that same guy was down to the boundary, ended up in the deep middle, intercepting the ball. It was like, it's typical Tampa 2025. This is just not last year. It's not 2 years ago. It's not 2022. You can go back as far as you want. And this offense just cannot capitalize when it matters the most.
Yeah, Ryan and I were talking about that second interception. Completely just fooled Baker. They made it look like he was the safety was bailing out, and really he was baiting him into throwing that kind of skinny post, which is what we've seen this year and really over the last couple of years. One of Baker's favorite throws. Now it's usually Mike that's running it. This time it was Emeka, but Emeka ran it earlier this year too. And it's one of those that as soon as they see the safety bail, they try to fit it in on a skinny post for a touchdown, and they've had a lot of success doing it. The thing is, the defense also watches film. It's not just the offense. And so that kind of looked like to me that the safety knew that skinny post was coming, and I'm going to bait him into it. And he baited him into it. Baker fell for it, and he picked him off. You can say it's a great play by the safety. You can say it's bad on Baker. The fumble, obviously, new left tackle with Tristan Wirfs out, and he actually played pretty well. I thought he just that one play obviously is not going to be a good one. And then the first interception was one of those weird, because I don't always look at interceptions as just these terrible plays, because it's one of those things that, and Marcus talked about this a lot, they struggle stretching the field. So I was happy to finally see them try to stretch the field. Now, it was underthrown and it was picked off and ended up not being great, but at least they were trying to stretch the field. And it was one of those weird games for Baker, because I don't think he had a great game. But if you look at the numbers, 75% completion percentage, 343 yards, 2 touchdowns, you're like, that's a really good game. But then you have the 2 picks and then the fumble. And he also had, I believe, a fumble near the goal line that he recovered that was on a sack, 7-yard loss on that one too. But it's just, as Marcus said, this has become the 2025 Bucs. Anytime it looks like there's going to be some momentum, again, the offense I thought was looking good early. And again, it looked good until you got to 50. And then they would go back into this bad football team. The beginning of the game, they force a 3-and-out, or not 3-and-out, they force a punt, they go score a touchdown, and then the 3rd and 8 looks like the defense is going to get off the field. Maybe the offense can start building even more momentum. They allow the big 63-yard touchdown pass or whatever, and then Tampa finally looks like they're moving again. Maybe they can kind of gain a lead again. They have to punt around midfield, which 4th and 1 around midfield, I probably would have gone for it, just the way the offense was playing at that point. But that's just me. He ends up punting, but it just feels like that kind of stuff constantly happens where they don't play complementary football. When the offense starts to look like it's rolling, then the defense gives up a big touchdown drive. When it looks like, man, if you can just get to the offense, they might separate. Or when the defense is starting to get some stops like they did in the second half, which we'll talk about next segment, boom, the offense can't do anything. It just, they don't ever play complementary football. They cut the game with a field goal to 7, and then that's when they allow the big kickoff return. And immediately Dolphins get a field goal out of that drive, put it right back to 10. They just do not complement themselves at all on all sides, all 3 phases.
Yeah, and look, I think too, one thing you brought up there. First, let me go back and say I do think the first interception, I mischaracterized that. Not a bad decision, but just threw it behind Jalen McMillan. For some reason, he did not get up and try to touch the defender down, so the Bucs got a little bit lucky to get a 15-yard penalty on Miami for a blindside block. But again, I think that 4th and 1.5 or so, 49.5-yard line, somewhere in there. Again, I've been saying the last few weeks, the 2025 Bucs on offense are looking a lot like the 2022 Bucs, the last year of Brady and the first year of Bowles as head coach. And that offense was just trying to eke itself down the field and just try not to make too big of a mistake and control the ball. And so what they did a lot, because they didn't have trust, is they punted on 4th and usually go for it in today's era of professional football, of any football, quite frankly. And we've seen a couple of these in recent weeks from Todd. I go back to the Buffalo game where it was like, man, they already got 30-something points. You're not stopping them. I know it's 4th and 3 or 4. You got to go for that. And I know
they weren't stopping you.
Right.
They weren't stopping you that game.
Sure. And then this game, I know it's earlier. It's not been as well established, and you're thinking for the world that you could stop Quinn Ewers. But it's 4th and 1.5. Again, it's in territory where you see most teams now in the league go for it, and you did decide to punt. So that kind of instinct is reverting back to his 2022 self of, the offense isn't great, so I'm just going to trust the defense, which, by the way, has not earned trust in its own right.
And one thing I'll say is this, I don't think this team is served very well offensively when Baker has to throw the ball 44 times. I mean, the score was only 20-17. It's not like, they were down 2 scores for a good part of the game, but it's one of those deals where they only ran the ball 16 times for 53 yards. See, remember, so if the Bucs ran the ball and it was bend but don't break defensively for, let's say, the Saints or the Falcons or whoever, when they ran the ball really well, they said, make Baker beat us down 2 scores because your defense isn't good enough, neither is your offense. And so the fact that they couldn't run the ball when it mattered the most. I mean, Bucky had 9 carries for 19 yards. It's not very good. I probably can get you 22 yards if you give me the ball 9 times. And Bucky's a way better athlete than me. Yeah. But when J-Mac and Godwin are your leading receivers, you have to understand one thing. Mike's not a factor. So if your best player is not a factor and the supporting cast is doing what they have to do, then it's going to service the defense better. My point of that is saying sometimes when you guys are a little too young for Michael Jordan, but let Michael Jordan get 50. Just don't let Pippen beat you. Don't let Steve Kerr. Don't let Paxson hit the big shot. Don't let Horace Grant get a double-double. So if Horace Grant is your leading scorer, you're going to beat the Bulls. And so it's the same thing for me with Tampa Bay. If Mike Evans isn't your number one weapon, then the offense is probably going to sputter. And if they don't run the ball and your best receiver is not your biggest threat, then you have a chance of winning. And that's just what I saw that Miami kind of put together, was saying, make somebody else beat us, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, they had great coverage, I thought, on Evans a lot. There's very few times that they threw at Mike where I was like, oh, he was open, Baker missed it, or whatever. It was usually pretty good coverage by Rasul Douglas and them. But all right, coming up next, we'll break down the defensive performance. Don't go anywhere. Well, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with PrizePicks, it's always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and PrizePicks lets you stay in control. PrizePicks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on PrizePicks was quick and simple. The app is super easy to navigate. It's made watching games more engaging, especially when following individual player performances. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, we're back for another segment here on the Bucs Squad show, recapping the 20-17 loss to the Miami Dolphins. Let's break down the defense. And again, it was very similar to the offense in terms of how weird of a game it was. They came out, forced the punt early, then they had the bust in coverage. Looked like maybe it was a cover 2, and Tyke Smith kind of tried to undercut the route and beat him deep with Theo Weiss on a 3rd and 8, where you could have started building some momentum. First half looked like the Bucs defense we've been seeing. They showed since the bye week, I believe they ranked 28th or last, somewhere in that range on almost every defensive statistic, which is way off my bold prediction of them being a top 10 defense after the bye week, because they've been terrible. But that's what they looked like the first half. Then the second half, it was a little better. Again, I believe they only scored, they scored 3 points in the second half, and that was because of the long kick return. Now, it wasn't just because of that, because they get it around midfield, you tackle them for a 5-yard loss on the first play, and then A-Shane gets a first down, and then they end up getting a field goal out of the drive. But second half, I felt was much better. They did have the third and 13, I believe, from like the 1-yard line that they allowed a conversion. So, again, they still showed the signs of the bad defense they've been playing, but I felt like there was a lot better tape. Now, with that being said, and Ryan, you might know this answer, they have to be one of the top teams in terms of missed tackle percentage, because they are terrible at it. And that's something Marcus has brought up a lot this year.
Yeah, no, I don't know the specific number. I'm not sure that I want to read the specific number. But you're right. I mean, in the first half, the defense was not good. And, they had the first drive. As you said, I think that the broadcast got really hung up on Jamel Dean's role in that long touchdown play. He did what kind of the whole point of zone coverage and zone beaters are supposed to be, is you suck a corner in, you throw it over his head, and then you see where the safety is. And so I found that more on Tyke for Sure, Jamel's role would be able to make it an incomplete pass, but the reason it was a long touchdown was because the safety help was not there. For example, the Bucs ran that same concept in the second quarter. It was Mike Evans' first catch of the game. The corner sucked down just like Jamel Dean did, but the safety came over, popped him pretty quick, and it was a 12 or 13-yard gain instead of a long touchdown. So, yeah, Jamel did not play it perfectly. He did get sucked up, but it's just a normal 10 or 12-yard completion, 13-yard completion if the safeties can be in the right spot, or if he's even quicker to it, then maybe he could assist making the knockaway. But I thought that in the second half, as you said, it was more like an A- or B+ in the second half. The Dolphins were under 100 yards. It was just that they gave up, as you said, that third and long at their own 1 or 2 yard line. You'd love the field position that you have generated if you got the stop right then and there. They got the stop later in the drive, so again, didn't destroy them, but you certainly think field position in that. And then also, the same token as the Bucs turning the ball over 3 times, you still want to generate a turnover yourself, because that's the second start in the league for Quinn Ewers. Like that's not someone that I expect to take good care of the football. He threw a couple picks last week against a bad Bengals team. So in the league, your expectation is that you should be averaging at least 1 forced turnover a game. And again, we know the Bucs have not gotten constant pass rush. That's one avenue to confuse a rookie quarterback. We know Jamel Dean was going through injuries in the second half, and he'd had some interceptions early in the year. But still, again, I can't say that they were just overwhelmingly awesome in the second half. They did allow the offense to have plenty of chances to be back in the game. But you notice there's neither side of the ball is good enough, is capable enough to single-handedly win the team a game when they need to. And there are some units in the NFL where even on defense, like I think of the Texans defense, sometimes they single-handedly win the Texans the game. CJ Stroud's not been the same dude since his rookie year. And so they sometimes just get so many sacks, so many turnovers that they enable themselves to win it. The Bucs are not in that category, even when they step up and play better defensively. And then offensively, they've not been in that category for several weeks now either. So again, that's just what's been resulting in these close losses, is that you have a few moments of brilliance and a lot of moments of stupidity on both sides of the ball.
I'll say this. I think Mike McDaniel, his first half game plan, they won the game in the first half. And what they did was, it's almost like taking a page out of any high-powered, successful college offense. They got the ball in space. It was play action. There was bootlegs. There were bubble passes. There were screens. Even on the first drive, I saw what Miami was trying to do. And barring a penalty or so, they might have went down and scored. After that first drive for Miami, when they had like -6 yards or whatever it was, when they found a way to finish the half with like 260 in the first half, 17 unanswered, they really had Todd Bowles dialed up. And so it's funny because you two guys, I don't know if y'all need to coach or if you coached before, but that was a form of, I want to say, let's call it read cover 2. Read cover 2. It wasn't true cover 2 where the safety has half field and the corner has the short outside flat area. So it looked like Dean was reading it. It was trips. It was 3 receivers. I'm talking about the first touchdown. So there were 3 receivers on one side, and they ran what's called stick. So the innermost receiver ran, he was working on the linebacker. The slot receiver that's in between 1 and 3, the second receiver, he ran a 5-yard out. And Dean did exactly what he was supposed to do. He came up. Tyke Smith did not get over top of the outside receiver, Weiss or whatever his name is. That was a bust on him. So when I'm listening to Vilma talk about it, he's like, oh, yeah, Dean had bonehead mistake. No. Dean did exactly what he was supposed to do. Smith didn't. And so when you have those kind of busts, then Todd Bowles said that they're fine on the secondary. They need to communicate better. And he was saying they wanted balance on offense. I'm watching at halftime. He was talking about tackling. I'm talking about his interview at halftime. I'm thinking to myself, like, that was such a big bust on a very simple pass concept that everybody on every level of football runs stick, especially out of trips. The outside guy goes deep. The inside guy runs 5-yard out. And the middle guy works on the Mike linebacker. And for Ewers to actually read that and see that Tyke didn't get over top, it made guys that don't know what they're talking about, guys like Dean, look bad. And so And then the second touchdown to the tight end, like, it was a great throw, by the way. I mean, you were just kind of like when you're in his situation, you're a 7th round pick, second game starting. They bench Tua. Everybody's talking about you're the future. You're playing with house money. So all you got to do is just go in and show that you're legit or that you can run the offense, and you'll be the guy next year. And then after next year, you'll be signing a whole new contract. So you got to understand, like, the Bucs gave up too many big plays in the first half. And by the time they made their adjustments in the second half, it didn't matter because you're not good enough to come down from a 2-score lead. You're not good enough to come from behind. You're not good enough to turn the ball over 3 times on offense, give up 140-something rushing on the ground, 4.5 yards a carry, and still find a way to win. The block field goal. And when all the complementary parts don't show up, then the defense isn't just good enough. But I will say, I thought Hassan Reddick started off the game well. He was very active. He was a havoc player. And I thought this game looked like at first from Miami's first drive that Tampa Bay was going to run off with it. They get a stop, they go down the score, and as soon as they had that bust on defense, they were never the same. It was almost like you just can't take a punch. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers don't have a chin. They're kind of like Lennox Lewis. They're big, they're pretty, but if you punch them right in the mouth, he'll quit. And that's what Lennox did in all the fights that matter. He just can't take a punch. And so but Tampa, I thought in the second half played extremely well as far as only giving up 3 points. But what y'all have to understand is if I have a 2-score lead and there's 7-8 minutes left, I'll let you score. I'll play prevent defense. Hopefully you throw me the ball. And then if you score, you're not going to get the ball back in enough time to even come back and win. So that's how Miami finessed their way into victory. They maintained the 2-score lead long enough for it to matter. Even when Tampa cut it to 10-17, they still couldn't do nothing with it because it's just not that good. Tampa Bay's talented, but they're not well coached, and they're just not a good football team.
And I think they don't have confidence. I think their confidence is gone. And I think you see that on both sides of the football. I'm glad you brought up the Dean thing. So I didn't get to actually listen to the game. I was at my parents' house doing one last little Christmas lunch. So I was watching the game on my phone because my 2-year-old niece wanted to watch The Grinch. So I didn't get to have football on the TV. But so I didn't hear them talk about Jamel Dean. But you're right. If they were blaming Jamel Dean, I don't understand that because if he drops back like they would want him to, they throw the quick out and it's a first down. Because the linebacker's not far enough over there. And so it would have been a first down. And now it wouldn't have been the 3-yard touchdown, but at least maybe with the tackling, maybe it would have been. But you would hope it would be a 63-yard touchdown. But yeah, I also wanted to ask you, Marcus, because you've brought up Antoine Winfield in the past, and that 3rd and 13 was on him. And they talked about him having, bad eyes, the one that was in the end zone. And it was just, he was not paying attention that it could be a bootleg play action. Instead, he thought it was just a sellout run, and so he was late to react to his assignment. What do you think has happened to him as the season goes on? Because I will say this, when you're a bad defensive team, sometimes players get blamed that shouldn't get blamed. Like if someone gets burned and a safety tries to cover up for it and get there in time, the TV copy just shows the safety's there and late. And like, oh, the safety messed up. Well, no, actually the corner messed up, but the safety had to get there. But what is it with him this year that you're seeing? Because I feel like it's almost that he is frustrated with how bad the defense is playing, that almost he's trying to do something to create a big play, but because of that, he's getting himself out of position, and teams are starting to pick on that.
I first of all, I think that's a great question, Jaron. I think when you're a guy who made the Pro Bowl, which he didn't really have the stats to even line up with it, and just for our listeners and for you guys' knowledge, the Pro Bowl is a general manager's gentleman's agreement. Like, if I'm the general manager for, let's say, Minnesota Vikings, and I have a first rounder, and Ryan is the general manager for the Packers, we're going to vote for each other's guy to make us look like we made a good draft pick. That's what the Pro Bowl is. That's why a guy like what's his name, Jordan, was it Brooks, the guy that for the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah.
A bad team, best linebacker in the NFL doesn't make the Pro Bowl because there's nothing behind him that stamps him as a guy. My point of saying that is to answer your question is when you're Antoine Winfield, you're almost playing for stats now. When you're on a defense that's struggling, you can kind of get outside of the framework of the defense where you'll try to make a play or you'll start guessing or you'll get greedy or you'll get you'll lose confidence in the guys around you to where you feel like since you're the Pro Bowler, you need to do something. And what will happen is you'll find yourself in a position where if you don't do your job and you do somebody else's, there's nobody to do your job. I just think that he's kind of become a riverboat gambler. He made a hell of a play on that first pass breakup down the seam when they trust him to play some nickel back. It was two Mike or whatever they call it, and two safeties high, and he was trail technique, and he got his hands on the ball. That was a great play. It's just that when the game's on the line, I don't think he trusts his teammates anymore. I don't think he trusts the pass rush. I don't think he trusts the call from Todd Bowles, and I don't think he trusts the guys that surround him. Like, I played safety. So once you look up and see a guy like get beat, like, you know, on that first touchdown pass, then you're looking around saying, hey, man, what's up with that? Like, hey, you know, oh, I thought this, I thought that. And then it's like, well, I got to do something. I just think Winfield Jr., and I know his father. Like, we played against each other in college. He's a year behind me. He's from Akron. Antoine Winfield Sr., great player too, and good person. So when I watch these guys play, I know from their perspective, you just when you lose trust in the call, the coach, your teammates, and damn near yourself, you'll just become a riverboat gambler. You'll just start rolling the dice. You'll have bad eyes, and you'll guess wrong, and then you'll get cooked for it.
You want to add anything, Ryan?
I was going to say, I know we got to.
free.
Yeah, I know we got to get a break, but I was just going to say with Antoine too, again, it feels like he's had a very much up and down few years where he comes on the scene and he's just excellent. He's looking like he's going to be one of the best safeties in the league, and then he has some injuries and he gets a step slower. You know, he's never the most athletic guy to begin with. That's why he was not a first-round pick. He had all the numbers coming out of Minnesota, but and I think he's got really good instincts, but for that play, it let him down. I do appreciate the hustle because we saw last year in the Atlanta game, he stripped Kyle Pitts hustling down to the goal line and could have gotten that call. He did hustle on that touchdown play in the first quarter and knocked the ball out just a yard too late into the end zone. So, again, I think the effort's there, but again, the discipline, and I think that's what Marcus is talking about there, the discipline for a safety has got to be paramount, because I know this is going to be very oversimplified, but you're the safety, which means you cannot let anyone get behind you, whether it be because you've got to tackle someone in front of you or someone running behind you. You are the last line of defense, and sometimes you're going to have to just make a tackle after a 15-yard game. That's the play that Tyke Smith needed to make on the earlier play. But, you know, when you're starting to gamble as a safety, I mean, that's just, you're basically saying the entire defense is on a gamble at that play, because when your last line of defense is even having to do that, then that means you're making up for something that's going wrong in front of you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, coming up next, we will go around the NFL. We'll look at the Carolina Panthers. They took on the Seattle Seahawks today, as well as several other scores. Don't go anywhere. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the only all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast, whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees. Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for 1 monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save me hours every week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, we're back here with another segment of the Bucs Squad Show on Locked On Bucs. Remember, this is just something we do a couple times a week, 2 episodes a week. In fact, it doesn't take anything away from what James does. He'll have his reaction show later on tonight, so you'll definitely want to check that out. All right, so obviously Tampa falls. They needed Carolina to fall, and the Carolina Panthers took on the Seattle Seahawks. They fell 27-10 at home, which sets up a huge game in Week 18. Now, I do want to clarify some things because they said this on the broadcast and it was wrong. Then I also saw some posts on social media that was wrong. This game isn't technically for the division yet. If Atlanta loses to the Los Angeles Rams on Monday, then it is for the division. But if they were able to win and then win next week and then Tampa wins, Tampa can't get in. I think Carolina would still be the one that gets in. The broadcast said this is for the division. Technically not yet. And then I saw someone post, Google AI says that Carolina already won the division. Don't ever listen to Google AI. If you search something on Google, go to the article that they link and see if it's actually accurate, because 90% of the time that AI is wrong. So Carolina has not won the division yet, and it's not technically for the division, although we hopefully assume that Atlanta will lose on Monday to the Rams. Then it is for the division.
Yeah,
But is there anything else that interesting? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a bit lazy of the broadcast to just kind of, because they were doing it at the halftime show, they were doing it everywhere where
Adam Schefter tweeted it too after the
yeah,
game. So
yeah, and it's like,
yeah.
you know, again, if there is a three-way tie, just to explain it one more time, at 8-9, which now could be very real if the Bucs win, the Falcons win both, they go to your record against each other. And so the Bucs, by losing to that Falcons team a few weeks ago in Tampa, they're going to only have a 2-2 record against the Falcons and Panthers. The Panthers, meanwhile, swept Atlanta, would split with Tampa. They're 3-1. Atlanta swept by Carolina, split with Tampa. They're 1-3. So Carolina wins that 3-team tiebreaker by winning those games against one another, having a better record. So that's the reason why Atlanta has to lose again now. And this is the scenario. If the Bucs would have just beaten the Dolphins, well, they still needed to beat the Panthers anyway, but now they'd be up to 9 wins and be protected from that tiebreaker. So again, you know, just another missed opportunity for the team. And yet now you do need Atlanta to probably lose this game in particular, because the last week they played the Saints. I know the Saints are playing better, but I'm watching a Falcons Saints game and needing a particular result is disgusting. And so I'm not going to rely on that whatsoever. It needs to be the Rams on Monday Night Football.
You know, this whole playoff thing is gotten so wild, you know, and like when we started this show 2 months ago, it felt like, you know, they were 6-2 and, you know, this game wouldn't matter. It matters. And I think that the winner obviously is going to win a division. Atlanta does have a say. And Ryan, you've broken that down extremely well. I just think that I don't even think, regardless of who wins the division, they're going to get ousted in the first round, because the NFC South is just not very good. It's just not. It's not competitive. You know, like, you know, we're talking about going around the NFL. And when you start seeing teams like Cleveland beat Pittsburgh, I mean, you know, I'm not sure what that's all about. It's a rivalry game, obviously, but it's a situation to where everybody else seems like the relevant teams seem like they're peaking, and they're like playing their best football. Like, if you're not playing your best football by Christmas, you know, Miami was a different team. Like, people tend to forget. I mean, they won 5 out of their last 7. I mean, their record is 7-9 or whatever it is, but that wasn't a bad football team. Like, people think your record means that you're bad. No, it just comes down to how you match up with the other team. I mean, Minnesota goes out here and beats Detroit, eliminates them, just gets them out of here. It showed that they were the frauds that we thought they were. Even Kansas City playing Denver tight. You know, after that game Denver had with Jacksonville, they gave up a ton of points. Houston goes into Los Angeles and they beat the Chargers. And who knew Baltimore could score 41 against Green Bay? You know, so we got a couple games going on now, but it's like when you start watching everybody and you start thinking about how this thing is going to add up, I think, like I said, I always say it comes down to who plays who and where. Patriots took care of business. Jacksonville, you know, they're playing down 10-0 and they come back and win. You know, Trevor Lawrence, you know, gets in the end zone. He throws for 263, and it's like, you need somebody that's clutch, or somebody has to put the cape on, or one unit has to say we're not losing. And even Seattle, Carolina was very competitive for at least one half. And then Seattle proved to be the better football team. And I honestly think, and I don't know, we'll talk about it on Tuesday, but I think Carolina's going to beat Tampa Bay. I mean, last year I was at that game. Ryan, you said you're going to the game, right?
I will be.
I might even just fly down there and go to the game myself just to watch it in person and do the post-game show from a hotel or whatever. But when you go around the NFL, man, like you're either a pretender or you're a contender. And so, like, the way Miami played inspired football, knowing that they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, like, you have to watch those teams because they can play spoiler. You know, they can make your life hard when their life is hard. When they say misery loves company, well, guess what? Miami just made life hard for Tampa because they have some soul searching to do in the next 7 days. And Carolina, you know, in the first half, I think they had a chance to, you know, duke it out with Seattle and figure this thing out. But you have to understand that, you know, when the AFC North, talking about Pittsburgh and Baltimore, all those teams, I mean, Baltimore went out and won at Green Bay, and they scored a lot of points. And then
without Lamar.
Great point, Jaron. And Pittsburgh looked like sewer water. Like, they looked like basement carpet today. They just looked like a team that was uninspired. And it's not the same team that beat the Dolphins when Aaron Rodgers was dialing them up with the quick game. And it's just there was a call in that Pittsburgh game I thought was a little suspect, that roughing the passer on Shador, when I thought Hayward already had his hands on it. It's never roughing the quarterback when you have your hands on the quarterback already. Now, if you scoop him up and dunk him on his head, but if you're already in motion and you've got an arm around his back and then you're just finishing the play, that's not roughing the passer. But that's neither here nor there. We're talking about around the NFL. I just think that Tampa Bay is not one of the elites. New England went into the Jets and did what they were supposed to do. And now it's just coming to the point where throw all the records out the window, because you don't really know who's really good or who's bad. You just know who matches up better against the other team. And I just thought what Mike McDaniel did today, he put on a master class of how you expose Todd Bowles. I just think he just did it for 4 quarters, and it put the Bucs in a very precarious situation.
Yeah, and you mentioned just how crazy some of these games are. Pittsburgh, for example, has won 3 straight games. They beat the Ravens on the road. They beat the Dolphins. They beat the Lions on the road. They go in, they beat the Browns. They win the AFC North. The division's over, and they lose 13-6 to the Browns and look terrible doing it. Baltimore doesn't look like they have much of a life. Lamar is out, and they go and blow out a Green Bay team that's really good, blew them out, and now that division now comes down to the final week of the season. That one actually comes down to the final week as of now. There's nothing that has to be done there, which is why we love the NFL as well. Tonight is going to be an interesting one because you got Chicago and San Francisco. If San Francisco wins that game and then beats Seattle the following week, they win that division and might even have the 1 seed, I think, in the NFC. But if the 49ers lose, then the Rams have a shot at the 1 seed still. And so there's a lot still to be played. It's just I'm glad you brought up that I think the winner of the division between the Panthers and the Bucs, they're going to lose the first game in the playoffs, in my opinion, no matter which one it wins. Because the NFC, I don't know if there is a great team in the NFC, but there's a lot of good teams. Like, there are a ton of good teams, and I wouldn't put the Panthers or the Bucs in that category the way they've played this year. Now, I think the Panthers are a rising team and on their way there, but they're not there right now. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I know we've already talked about them a lot, but just going back to the Miami and the Bucs thing, because Marcus, you brought this up. Miami looked like a team, despite having no chance at the playoff, they looked like a team that was still trying to prove something. Obviously, Quinn Ewers is trying to prove something because he's a 7th-round pick. He's getting an opportunity. Like, it looked like guys that are still trying to prove that they should be on the team next year and just all that. Whereas Tampa does have something to play for, theoretically, but they don't look like they do. They look like a team that's just like, man, just get me to, as the inside of the NBA says, get me to Cancun. Like, get me to the offseason. I'm done. It was very evident watching those two teams.
Yeah, no, I think that when you have guys fighting for jobs, that's always going to be what pushes you over the top into still playing. And this notion of tanking and that sort of thing. I know teams are not constructed as well. I know they might sit some players. There's obviously a big hoopla around Max Crosby and how allegedly wanted to play the last two games for Las Vegas. They said no, thank you. We'll sit you out. And of course, he's going to be an interesting name to watch this off season.
Did you see the
But
video he posted?
oh, I did not actually. I did not.
So he posted a video of him dunking and stuff to show that he's not injured. So
Oh,
yes,
okay,
that
there
will
you
be
go.
that'll be
More proof
very
there.
interesting.
But the guys that are on the field, again, they're fighting for jobs. And as you guys talked about earlier with Quinn Ewers, I mean, again, this is a guy that would love to be a starting quarterback in National Football League. This is his way to try to prove that he can be. And, Tua is going to have a lot of guaranteed money that the Dolphins would have to move on from this off season. Of course, they can also acquire a quarterback through a different means. But, these guys that are out there, I mean, they don't have Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle was banged up in this game. So all these guys behind them, they're the guys fighting for more playing time in the future and a different job. So, you never take those things for granted. And that's why, you'll see a few stray blowouts as we did today with the likes of the Patriots over the Jets and that sort of thing. Teams are just so overwhelmed against teams playing for something and actually playing well. But you also have teams that, again, okay, fine, they're out of the playoffs, have been out of the playoffs for a month, but they've got guys that they would like a second contract. They like their first legitimately big contract, like just all kinds of things.
Yeah, for sure. All right, coming up next, we will give our player of the game. Also, if you have any questions you want us to answer, we'll try to get to as many as we can, but we'll do our player of the game and kind of give our final analysis on the game. That's coming up next. All right, Buck Squad, we're back for one final segment, our player of the game segment. This was a tough one because there weren't great performances, but I thought there was two wide receivers that played well. I'll go with one of them just so y'all can have the other one if you want it. But I'll give it to Jalen McMillan. They said it was a career high 7 catches on the day. He had 114 yards. It's just crazy because just a few weeks ago we were wondering if he was even going to play this year. There's obviously a fear anytime you have a neck injury if you're ever going to be able to play again. And then once it was like, no, he's going to come back. It's like, okay, so you're going to be a little worried to take a hit, all this stuff. Man, he looks like the Jalen McMillan we saw last year, or at least has. I mean, there's obviously some rust still there. But I thought he played really good today. And he started to, and I know they didn't hit on some of them, but he started to show the deep ball threat and the big play threat that Tampa's been missing.
Well, I think, for me, I would have picked J-Mac if you didn't, Jaron. But for me, I think it's Chris Godwin. I think, he's been limited to a possession guy that has to do something with the ball after he catches it. And I thought the route he ran on that touchdown, that first touchdown when, he bent it right in front of the safety behind the linebacker, caught it in traffic. It was a great throw by Baker. I think for Godwin to come out and have 7 for 108. I mean, J-Mac has 7 for 114 and only his third game or so. I think that's very commendable. I just think Chris Godwin coming off an injury too, he showed up, he showed out, and even in the past couple of weeks, he's made some big third down catches. He's been a guy that's in the slot that's been a matchup problem schematically, I think, for a lot of teams. I just think that neither one of those guys can truly be celebrated if you don't win the game. And it's sad because football is the ultimate team sport. And so when the defense doesn't show up in the first half, and then you see Baker trying to run around and do his thing, it's like, well, at that point, you just want the Bucs to win the game, and we don't care who the player of the game is or whoever scores the last touchdown. Hell, it could have been McLaughlin, the field goal kicker. If he doesn't get it blocked and it's tied up and there's a game winner, he's a player of the game. But it just didn't play out that way. But for me, I think it was Chris Godwin. And I just think ever since he's come back from his injury, he's been very productive. I would have even threw an honorable mention Cade Otton in there because he only had 4 catches, but at the same time, he was a factor and he was a part of the game plan. And I think Josh Grizzard is just at the point where what this team needs offensively, I don't know if he can cook it up. I don't know if he has the recipe to feed everybody, protect the quarterback, run the ball, and win the game and don't turn it over. You got to understand, he had 3 turnovers on offense. So really, there shouldn't be any player of the game offensively. You had 3 turnovers and scored 17 points. But if we're just going to talk about, guys that, showed up and, played hard, cool. And then defensively, when you look at what Achane did, like he ran the ball 18 times. He had 83 yards. His first carry didn't even come to the second quarter. So you have to understand that he wasn't even a factor in the beginning. And Miami found a way to spread Tampa Bay out and quick pass, quick screen. And the one play they fumbled, that play is called a jet read. So what Ewers was trying to do was read the defensive end to decide whether he was going to hand the ball off on the jet sweep or run it up the middle. It's a very, very popular college play. I just think he went into his college bag of tricks, and Todd Bowles wasn't ready. But my player of the game would be Chris Godwin.
Yeah, there's always more options when you win, right? Because when I look at the performance and just kind of go unit by unit defensively, we mentioned some busts in the secondary, some poor plays there. So there's no one that stands out there. The linebackers did not have an overly elevated role. Gervonta Dennis had a couple nice plays, but again, we know the struggles that he's had this season. The defensive line, Vita Vea didn't really stand out. The rush defense in general didn't stand out. Miami ran it really effectively with both Jalen Wright and Devin Achane. So I can't really give a nod of approval there. I think Yaya Diaby, if you were to pick one defensive guy, at least he did have a couple TFLs. He did have a sack, so he had a couple of really great moments, but maybe not just a dominant game. And then offensively, I mean, you can't give it to Baker. He had 3 turnovers. You can't give it to the running backs. They didn't get the ball. And the receivers, as you mentioned, I mean, Chris and Jalen are your options, or your main options. And, I'll just go Jalen and just piggyback off of Jaron a little bit and just say that, again, to experience that kind of injury young in your career too. I mean, I know it's one thing to be in the second half of your career and come back from a significant injury, but to be still trying to figure out your place on the team and in the NFL. Like Tampa clearly this past offseason did not view Jalen as somebody that could be a number 1 in the league, but we'd still love for him to be a number 2 in the league moving forward. And, last year he was kind of the 3rd or 4th option. And these few games, there's these flashes. Now, obviously this game was more than a flash, but there's these flashes of, okay, down the line here, giving a full season, could he elevate to the number 2 receiver? And I think there is some potential for that now. And I didn't necessarily feel that way after season number 1. So again, I think he had a very meaningful game. You saw early in the game, Baker was putting some good placement throws on him. He was making some sliding catches like he was a baseball player. And then he was able to be more of a threat down the field. So I really liked what I saw out of Jalen McMillan. And again, I think that's a tough spot for a kid that had only had 1 year in the National Football League and then immediately had most of his second year taken from him in the preseason.
Yeah, for sure. And we do have one question already. Let me get to it. So this person asks, is it fair to say that most of the team just has given up on Todd Bowles? He says, I mean, week in and week out, not executing. They have an, oh, shucks, we'll get them next time mentality. I personally think this looks like a team that's quit, probably on the head coach, but just overall just has quit. They look like a team, and we've seen this from teams in all professional sports, where you can just tell they probably need a different voice in the locker room. And sometimes it's like, man, they have a solid coach. I mean, we saw like the Denver Nuggets fired Michael Malone, and he just won them an NBA championship 2 years ago, and they fired him. And it was just, they just needed a different voice. And that's kind of what I see when I watch them. They just their body language, when the frustration's as high as it is, I just think personally they probably just need a different voice in the locker room.
I think, to answer the question, I think they've given up on themselves. I don't know if, like, I would say defensively they've given up on Bowles. I mean, you can check the numbers. When you look at, I think they put a graphic up since week 9, how bad the defense has been, total yards and, pass defense and points, 29 points a game since week 9. So I think, to answer the question, they've given up on Bowles as a defensive coordinator. I don't know about as a head coach. I mean, that's a different You're talking about running a program, day-to-day CEO responsibilities. I think they've given up on him defensively. I think they've given up on Josh Grizz offensively. I think Baker's tried to make some things happen. I think they couldn't put their mojo together when everybody got healthy. And they're almost getting so predictable that, like, Mike Evans is only in when it's time for him to get the ball. Like for him to be a future Hall of Famer, he's not out there every snap. Well, you don't want Mike run blocking. Let one of the backups do it. So I think they're kind of showing their hand offensively, what they're going to do depending on who's in the game. And then, as far as, they had some penalties. I think this was a sloppy game. I mean, Miami had 10 penalties. Bucs had their fair share of penalties. So giving up on an entire situation, no, because they can still make the playoffs. And sometimes coaches, players, coordinators hang their hats just on making the playoffs. Not if they had a good season or if their system worked. It's, we made the playoffs. We won the NFC South for the 4th year in a row. So it's like, I don't think they've given up on Todd as a head coach, but I think defensively he's given up on himself. I think he's getting dialed up. And I think that the opposing teams have his number. And I think that the offense has probably given up on Grizzard's system, but not the players that they have. And they've yet to be able to put all their best 11 on the field in not one single game.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that with Todd Bowles again, and this is something that, there's going to be these questions that are, of course, going to be obvious in another week or so when the season concludes. And will the Bucs move on from him? And, this loss, unfortunately, if you include the playoff record of 1-3, he is now below 500 as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 35-36, including postseason. I think there's a lot of love for him on the defensive side of the ball, meaning I think those guys like Lavoie David really love him as a human being. And I feel like those guys really do, have in general, they are trying to still play very hard. But I do think there's a lack of confidence all the way around on both sides of the ball that this scheme, that this system, that some of these players that they just don't have a lot of trust in. And obviously we've been talking for weeks now about Todd going into the post-game press conference, say guys gotta execute, they gotta do better, Again, some of these guys are going to respond positive and say, you know what, I do have to play better. And some of these guys, as I said a couple of weeks ago, are going to say, man, no, you need to put me in a better position. I'm doing all that I can out here. And so, it's just festering, and it's what happens sometimes. And I know Todd has not been in Tampa as long as some of these other guys that do, quote, run their course, but I believe that's a real thing, that sometimes the locker room does need to be refreshed. That's why there's some famous examples like Andy Reid in Philly. There's why I think there's an ongoing example in Pittsburgh where Mike Tomlin, I think, is a heck of a football coach, but it's gotten a little old there. They're just creeping by year in, year out, and you hear this noise. Mike Tomlin, I think, is an excellent coach. I think if he resets for a year and goes somewhere else, he'll start winning and go in the playoffs there. But in Pittsburgh, it's just like this, here's a 9-8 season coming up again. And it's like, it's not bad, but when you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, when you're anyone in the NFL, can you get to the Super Bowl? Can you get to an AFC or NFC championship game? So anyway, I think with the Bucs, it's just, again, a lack of confidence in the whole operation, not maybe any one individual.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I will say Ian Rappaport from NFL Network talked before the game, said that he doesn't think that Todd Bowles should be fired. My thing is, I think some people take it as a shot when you say maybe he should just be a coordinator. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think some coaches look at that as a bad thing. But I think, he has shown at places maybe he can't handle being a head coach. But when he's just a coordinator, he's a really good coordinator. It didn't work out when he was a head coach. What was it, with the Jets before he became Tampa? Comes to Tampa and he's great as a coordinator. Then he gets moved to head coach and they start to struggle again. Maybe it's just one of those things that he struggles with balancing everything. And again, that's not a bad thing. Some guys just have to understand that, hey, I'm a coordinator. And I guarantee, if he did get fired and he became a coordinator somewhere, if he wanted to still do that he would have that defense playing really good football again. I just think maybe he just needs to step back and do that.
I agree with that. I think ego kind of gets in the way when it comes to going from coordinator to head coach because, NFL head coach is like the top of the line in this business. So, you don't want to be a lifelong coordinator. I mean, even when Josh McDaniel, when he was coordinator with the Patriots, he failed the first time he was a head coach. I mean, he's the same age as me. He's from Canton, been knowing him for years. And I'm like, he probably was a better coordinator than he was a head coach. But the better you are as a coordinator, the more you want to be a head coach and try to coordinate while you're the head coach. And I think that's probably what Todd Bowles is running into, is that it's run its course. And to your point, Ryan, I mean, even if for Mike Tomlin, for as long as he's been there, a head coach, I mean, Pittsburgh just hasn't won a Super Bowl since 2008, and it just ain't going to happen. I mean, he'll have a good year, but he'll be 9-8, 10-7, and then you'll get to the playoffs and get bounced.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that will do it for us here on the Locked On Bucs Squad Show. Remember, James will go live later on today. This is just extra content that we do a couple times a week. We'll be back live on Tuesday. Usually we do it at 9 Eastern time, 8 Central time. So kind of plan for that. If anything changes, we will let you guys know. But until next time, fire the cannons.